a little housekeeping first and tell you where this is aimed. I'm aiming this at mostly nonprofits that are still really early stage, still learning their way. You could be making even $2 million a year and still be kind of struggling, and that's who this is aimed at. So this comes out of my experience with fundraising. I was never trained as a fundraiser. I was never intending to be a fundraiser. I'm still kind of shocked that I'm the development director at Austin Pets Alive. This was not the life path that I planned for myself, but I'm very passionate about the cause, and I had the skill set that makes me good at development, and so this is where I landed and where I'm happy to be. So this is, if you're really an advanced development director, you're probably not going to get a ton out of this, but it's a great reminder. And what I'm going to do in this session, there's 2 sessions back to back in this room, and I'm going to talk about reframing your thinking around fundraising. And some of you know this. And then I'm going to, but I think people don't appreciate what fundraising really is enough. And then I'm going to show you how to get really tactical about that thinking, and I'm going to apply it to individual giving only. I'm not going to talk about corporate giving or events. I'm not going to talk about all the ways that you can raise money. But I think this is more important because when I was starting out, I jumped into Austin Pets Alive when they were already a $3 million organization with no training and no onboarding and just expected to fundraise. And what I'm going to talk about today is what I wish someone had told me earlier. I didn't learn about it until about a year into my experience with fundraising. And then we're going to have a second section, and that one is going to be far more detailed and tactical, and it's going to be about strategy. Because again, strategy is what I wished someone had told me about a lot earlier. And I'm right now at the point where I am so focused on data and strategy that my fundraising has gotten really predictable. Austin Pets Alive has a really stable financial health right now because of the amount of strategy that I've applied to the fundraising. I want to first talk about the title of this talk. Little story. When you're asked to speak at this conference, you're told when you're going to talk and where you're going to talk, and then the title is assigned to you. I didn't make this title. This isn't a title. I'm being told to move over here. This isn't a title that I would have come up with. I decided it was actually a pretty good title. But every year there's a different organizer, and every year they send me a title, and I kid you not, every year it's really negative. This is the title that was given to me for my first year of speaking at this conference. Fundraising, nobody wants to do it. And so I marched down the hall to the person who was organizing the conference and said, what do you mean? First of all, nobody is going to come to this talk with that title, and who am I? I'm not nobody, and I want to fundraise. So she agreed to call it Somebody Has to Do It, right? If you are the fundraisers at your organization, you have all faced this attitude. And then she went to how to ask for money. And this negativity repeats every year that they assign a title to the talk, and it really is insulting to me. So it's not about asking for money, but what that keyed me into is how people view fundraising. And a lot of us at small nonprofits are not starting out as fundraisers. We don't come in as professional fundraisers, and we have this attitude. This is how we understand what fundraising is, and it's not true. So I had these titles. How to thrive as a nonprofit, that's much more positive, right? Make friends to save animals. And this didn't make a lot of sense to the conference organizers. But this is what fundraising is. I'm serious about this. And you're gonna agree by the end of this talk. Now, I stuck with fundraising for survival because it truly is about survival. And if you're the fundraisers at your organization, you know this to be true. What a lot of people don't know when they start out in the nonprofit world is they focus all their efforts on their mission. They pour lots and lots of time and effort into the mission, and development seems to get left aside. It's kind of what you do in the evening, or if you're an executive director, or it's not given a lot of importance. But the top reasons why nonprofits fail, no matter how good they are at their mission, is because they don't pay attention to the money. They're either not paying attention to their finances or they're not paying enough attention to your fundraising. So this is still a pretty negative title. I Googled survival, images of survival on Google, and this is what came up. Crawling across the desert, it's a parched desert, it's really hard. It's adversarial, or it's really desperate. And this is often how we feel, right? It's really hard to support a nonprofit mission. I've had business people say, oh, it's really hard to run a business, but it's really easy to run a nonprofit because people want to give you money. And I was like, no, that's not quite it. And the really damaging thing about it is that it kind of gets into the psyche of your fundraising team. And you get to the point, and I was at this point in my first year of fundraising, where my donors were like my adversaries. I didn't like working with them. And that is really critical. It is really what is going to kill your nonprofit if you have a fundraising team that sits and sweats about picking up the phone and asking for someone for help. You get this feeling like you'd rather be eaten by dinosaurs that show no mercy than pick up that phone and talk to somebody in your community. Everyone has had that experience? I still have team members who are new who just hesitate about picking up the phone. And so I'm trying to engender a whole different concept. So this is what fundraising really is. This is a quote from Seth Godin. I'm sure some of you have heard about him. He talks about building your tribe. Great fundraising is connecting the disconnected. And what he means by that is that people out in the world, there are people who love your mission. They love animals. They want them to be saved. And it's your job to build a community out of those people, to inspire them and to engage them. And when you envision fundraising this way, it becomes less about asking for money. It becomes less adversarial. And things really take off when you gain this kind of attitude about fundraising. So this is great fundraising. This is an event that a local coffee shop puts on for us every year, and it's an Easter parade down South Congress Avenue, which is a big shopping and tourist street. And it's fun. Look at the faces of the people lining up. These are people who didn't know this parade was happening, and at the end of it, they have a big costume contest with dogs, so you see a couple of the dogs in costume. It's really fun, and people just join in and think about how much we love animals, and it's a really joyous occasion, and at the end of it, the coffee shop delivers us a large check, and that's all there is to it. We didn't ask anybody for money, we just created a community. So the way that you should be thinking about fundraising is the way that you feel about any relationship. Fundraising is about building relationships. And all of us know how to do that in our lives, or we should be in therapy if we're not, right? But the things that are really key to building a relationship are understanding what the other person in that relationship wants, engendering trust. In the nonprofit world, trust is based on transparency. Really engaging people, telling them your story, and then knowing how and when to ask for help or involvement from someone. Now, I'm going to apply this to how we do individual giving, and I'm focusing on that. I've become pretty militant about when I'm teaching fundraising, not talking about grants, which are actually my specialty, not talking about corporate, not talking about events. You can Google all that and learn it. I am going to this year do a webinar on grants that will be promoted on the American Pets Alive website. That is my specialty, but I can't cover enough of them in these talks, so I don't do it. And I also don't think you should concentrate on grants. They're never going to sustain you. They're never going to help you grow. They're great for new programs, and that's about it. But in animal welfare especially, and in all of the nonprofit world, your opportunity for support is in the people who give you donations. They make up 70% of the entire nonprofit world's support. In animal welfare, they are especially important. I have worked in other nonprofit fields, and I'm really struck by how important individual giving from small donors, not from big donors so much, in your early stages at least, is just so important. Now the problem with that, and you should understand what your problems are so that you can see where your opportunities are for fundraising, is that donor retention is the most important thing you can do to sustain and grow, but donor retention is especially low with small donors, and that's the people who fund animal welfare. So the response to that, understand the problem, find the solution, and the solution is this: engage, 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 inspire, communicate. That should be the heart and soul of fundraising in early stage, at least, animal welfare. Actually, all stages, but especially at your early stage. And it tends to get neglected because we're all too busy. But that is the biggest mistake you make at your earliest stage, is not talking, inspiring your donors. So there's a lot of research out there about what works in fundraising, and this organization called Donor Voice came up with the 7 major drivers for keeping your donors close, inspiring them and engaging them. You should take a picture of this. Most of all, they want to see that you are effective. So they want to hear your statistics, they want to hear your stories. Second is they want to know how they are effective. And so you need to get really explicit about that, and I'm going to show you some examples about how we do it at Austin Pets Alive. They put this third appreciation, a timely thank you, but that's really first. If you are not thanking people for their gifts in some way, they will leave. They will not come back. They will probably leave forever because people remember when you're not grateful for a gift. They want to feel a part of your cause, and they want to know what to expect from your organization whenever they interact with you. So I'm going to show you ways that you can build this into your fundraising. First of all, understanding what supporters want. There are all kinds of different donors. And when you're at your early stages, it's really important for you to have diverse funding sources because it insulates you from anything weird happening with any one stream of income. And so we at Austin Pets Alive have this philosophy that we have different groups of donors and we point opportunities to them. So we have tons of donors, and I bet you do too, who never want to give you cash. They will spend a lot of money on supplies for you. They will spend more on supplies than they would give you in cash, but they will never give you cash. We have donors we've had for 10 years who have never, ever given us a cash donation, but they buy tons and tons of supplies, and so make it easy for them. Put on an Amazon wish list. Tell them exactly what you need. And you can see we have this message on our wish list page that we inform people that we keep our wish list up to date. During the holiday season, when people want to really give to you or work on your behalf, we have ready a list of all the supplies that we need most. And so when people write to us and say, my business or my Girl Scout group or my school group wants to do a donation drive for you, we don't try to persuade them to give us cash, which is what we would really rather have. We give them a list of what we really, really need. We use all these opportunities for people to give, and we have quite a lot more, but these are some of the smaller ways the ways that small nonprofits can sustain themselves. And we're constantly telling people that, we welcome your giving in whatever way that you want to give, small or large, we appreciate it. We're very explicit about this. We're constantly communicating exactly what we want from our donors to show them how they can be effective. So we also do a lot of chip-ins. How many of you guys do chip-ins? You're raising money for an individual animal. These are one of the best ways that we fundraise because we can raise significant amounts of money. We've raised as much as $15,000 off of a single chip-in. Fast. These are really fast, and what drives them is that thermometer and the story of then the photo of the animal. And then this is a really great way to build a base of really enthusiastic donors, because it's really easy and direct to talk to them about what effect they're having. When people donate to these chip-ins, we immediately the next day thank them and tell them what's going on with the animal. If they've given a significant amount of money, I'm putting in my calendar, update so-and-so on Chesterfield, and 2 weeks later, update so-and-so on Chesterfield. We have a donor who gave us $1 million last year because for 2 years, she did these chip-ins, and I kept updating her. I was writing her email, I was sending her photos. I could tell how enthusiastic she was, how much she wanted to be part of our mission. And for 2 years, all I did was update her, call her, have a little chatter with her. She would never come in. She would never meet, which is what you want to do with a donor. But this last year, she gave us $1 million because she had become so attached to the mission. We now have 2 other donors who are just like that. They are doing chip-in after chip-in after chip-in. We run 4 or 5 chip-ins at a time, and they will come in and fill 5 chip-ins all at once. And I pay very close attention to those donors. I am on email, I am sending them pictures, I am getting them updates, and I'm doing it over and over and over again. One thing you really need to do is make it very easy for donors. I'm constantly telling new team members, you have to hold the hands of your donors. You have to lead them all along the way as they are donating to help them out. You do not want them to ever pause and be confused about what to do and how to be effective. So we do things like, we have this, when we altered our website, we built our whole website, which is only about a year old right now. If you guys go and look at it carefully. It was built around fundraising. You will see that donate buttons are everywhere. They are prominent. They follow stories. They are in blue. I'm going to show you this later for a reason. Our lists are very clear about how you donate. We tell people that they are important. It is all over our website how important our supporters are. So go through our website and read it carefully. Every word on that website is calculated to pull people in and make them feel a part of our cause. So another thing is your donors want to be able to talk to you. And if they're ever confused about what they're doing, you don't want to frustrate them because they will stop the process of donating unless they can get a hold of you and talk to you. So no matter how small you are, no matter how busy you are, put some way on your website near your donation process for them to get back to you and ask you questions. It is amazing to get a donor on the phone. That is such an opportunity for you to pull them in. I often, when someone says, I'm trying to make a $100 donation and I got really frustrated with your donation form, I say, well, here's how you do it. And by the way, come in for a tour. I'd love to meet you. People love this. They really respond to it. And when I learned that I was not putting a burden on people and asking them for money, but pulling them into my cause, that I had something to give back to them, when that was my attitude, my fundraising soared. So the smallest detail, especially on your website where people are trying to figure out the technology, is really important. So our donate button is blue. There's research out there that shows you that if your donate button is a different color than everything else on your website, people will notice it more. And also blue is the most likely color that they will notice. So if your brand colors are already blue, you're in trouble. But pick a different color. Pick purple, red, something that will stand out. Some of our designers look at our blue button and think, oh, that doesn't go with your branding. And we're like, exactly. That's exactly why that's like that. We also do things like we make sure we put an email for people to get back to us. And that email is manned by a member of my team who reads it every single day. I read it on weekends, and we are getting back to those donors really fast. A lot of you don't have much of a team, but there are key things you can spend your time focusing on rather than other things, and this is one of them. You also have to be aware of what worries your donors, right? So right at the moment where someone is putting private information into our website, we are telling them, we will never share your information. That is one of the prime things that donors worry about. And if you want a good relationship with them, you make sure you're taking care of them and that they know you're taking care of them. Okay, a really important part of any relationship is trust. And in the nonprofit world, what engenders trust is transparency. And you should all know that if you are in your early stages and not very experienced about fundraising and nonprofit development, that there is a whole digital network world out there that is rating you and watching you, and it is there whether you choose for it to be out there or not. And the prime example of this is guidestar.org. So I always encourage people every year in my talk to make sure that you go to guidestar.org. If you have ever submitted a 990 to the IRS, you are on GuideStar and your profile is empty, and that doesn't look good to people. So go in there and fill it out. It's also really good if you're not really up on what not good nonprofit management is, because the questions they ask are about what good nonprofit management is. And so it's like a little lesson. It's a little checklist. So if you're not aware of what it is, you can go onto this site, and as you answer questions, you're actually getting a little tutorial about what is expected of you as a good nonprofit. So you can go in there and fill out your form. You can take out your profile. You can take all the time in the world you want. Until you push the publish button, it doesn't get loaded for the public to see. So I used to do this like at midnight. When I first came on, we were in a little bit of crisis, and I was working like 100 hours a week to try to get us back to where we needed to be. So at midnight, I would go on, and for 15 minutes, I would spend filling out a piece of my GuideStar profile, and then the next night, I'd do a little more, and eventually I published it. If you are answering a lot of the good management practices correctly, you will get a seal of approval. There's bronze, silver, gold, platinum. Platinum's the highest. They're now dated. You have to update them every year. It used to be permanent. And they will send you that seal. And if you get that, even if it's bronze, put it everywhere. Put it on your newsletter. Put it in the footer of your website. This is about transparency and trust. And when people see that, a lot of really savvy donors know all about this. If they see it, they are looking for it, they will trust you. They are more likely to donate to you. Another part of building trust is your website is a really good tool for this, and it's actually expected by these watchdog groups. They go and rate you based on what they can find about you, and the primary place they go is your website. So in the footer of our website, we have a direct link to this donor privacy policy. This is actually required of another watchdog group called Charity Navigator. Charity Navigator does not allow you to fill out your profile, and you cannot get a rating on Charity Navigator until you have filed 7 years of 990s with the IRS. But when you have, they rate you and they publish your rating, and you have no say in it. So you should be building your GuideStar profile, which is where Charity Navigator pulls from, years before that 7th 990, so that by the time you get to that 7th year, everything that Charity Navigator expects to be there is there. Really savvy donors really depend on Charity Navigator rather than guidestar.org. You can just go and cut and paste our privacy policy, but you should be following that policy. This is the highest level of donor privacy. At Awesome Pets Alive, we never share, we never sell, we never use, we never exploit our donor private information. And donors really want that. The whole world is getting really, really worried about privacy. Other things that you are rated on is how much information is on your website. So your 990s should be a link to your 990s should be posted on your website. It is expected of you. Your performance metrics should be posted on your website. It is expected of you. And part of the reason for that is they want us to be really honest about how we're doing and how effective we are. And it's also kind of a way to force you to be a good nonprofit. If you're having to publish that your euthanasia rate is 77%, you should probably work on that. And if only because you want to continue to be supported. Okay, the most important part about fundraising is engaging and inspiring your donors. And you do this through stories. Storytelling is the most powerful thing you can do in fundraising. So we do it all the time. And what we're doing in our social media, in our newsletters, in our blogs, on our website, everywhere where we're communicating with donors, we are telling the stories that draw them into what we do. And something I want you to take away from this is that programming and development are often treated as two separate things in nonprofits. There's not a lot of alignment there. But at Austin Pets Alive, we consider ourselves lifesavers. We kind of inject ourselves and share the stories of our shelter constantly. We don't have a really strong divide between our programming teams and our development teams. In fact, when people are hired to do fundraising at Austin Pets Alive, they have to first go out and spend 2 weeks in the shelter shadowing all of our program managers and working in the nursery, in the clinic, in dog behavior. They're attending play group. They get a really deep dive into that, and they also understand the reality of our shelter so that they can talk to donors about it. Here is an example where, there's two examples here. This one is one, and then this one is up here. And this was a Facebook post where there's a video showing our vets out in the parking lot treating puppies that were suspected of having distemper. And so we're telling people what's going on. We're saying, you may be wondering why these vets are out in our parking lot. Here's why. So you're telling them some of the reality of what we deal with every day. People love this. They get very engaged with this. We get email back with people asking more questions about it. So whenever you are hearing from your donors, you know you're doing fundraising right. And probably some of you out there are wondering, she's not really talking about fundraising. This is fundraising. 99% of your time in fundraising should be this sort of thing. So this is a story from earlier this month. An investigative reporter, or wannabe investigative reporter, got his hands on some photos of our parvo ward before it was cleaned up in the morning. So puppies sitting in vomit and diarrhea, right? We were getting a lot of flack from that at first, but then because we are so engaged with our community that it flipped right over. And we worked it. Dr. Jefferson, who started that parvo ward, and it's her baby, it's what she's really proud of, put out a blog, and we put it out on our media that said, look, parvo is really dirty. It's really disgusting. We were flat out, outright with them. We are always like that. If an animal is dying, we will tell people that animal is dying. We don't hide. We don't show our whole sausage factory, which is what Dr. Jefferson calls it. We don't really push that hard, but we are frank and honest about what goes on in a shelter. People like it. A lot of fundraisers are really scared of that, but don't be scared of it. It engages people. It inspires them. It tells them there's a problem that they can help solve, and that's what people are looking for. So we put out this blog, and we are very explicit about what we want people to do. In this list of 6 things you can do, one of them was donate, but we don't treat fundraising, thank you, as just asking for money. We treat it as the same as asking for volunteers or asking for fosters or asking people to adopt or to watch our social media and spread the word about what we're doing. We are messaging to people that all this is the same thing. It is support. So you can see what we're asking them to do. I've underlined some of the things. And it's part of our culture to treat our community as the solution to everything that's wrong with animals in Austin. We build this sense that we are not a separate organization leading this cause that we're crazy about, but the community isn't really all that invested in. We tell people We are a community that loves animals, and we want to be here to help them, but we need you to be a part of it. We are constantly messaging that. So when you're really small, one of the really cheapest and fastest and most powerful ways that you can engage with your donors is through email. So you can put out social media all day long, but not everybody follows social media. They're not always going to come to your website and read your blog, but you can reach them directly through email, and it's free. So when you're really small, you can just do this with a long email list. How do you get email from people? Ask them for it. And where are you getting it? All of you have a really, no matter how small and young you are, all of you probably have a pretty decent email list. You've got adopters. You've got fosters. You've got volunteers. If you think you can't ask your fosters and volunteers for money, you are wrong. Those are your most incredible supporters, and they know you need money. And if they can give it, they will give it to you. So don't be afraid of asking your adopters and volunteers and fosters for money. When you're really young, you can just keep all those addresses on an Excel spreadsheet, but this is going to very quickly get out of control. Remember, you are depending on lots and lots of small donations, so there's a lot of data involved. One of the ways that you can manage that before you are able to adopt a donor management system, which I talked about yesterday, is to use a CRM through one of these major marketing platforms. The one we use at MailChimp, the one that I'm aware of most, is MailChimp. I'm not promoting it. There are others. But you can get MailChimp for free. Until you have 2,000 donors in your system, it is free. And it's a really powerful system. That you can pay as you go, and it quickly, once you reach 2,000 people in your system, it quickly starts to add up. But by then, you should be bringing in enough money to afford it. When you do use those systems, you do have to educate yourself about spam rules. You can do whatever you want out of your own email, but once you start using one of these systems, it's easy to get blackballed if you start spamming people. So they tell you what spam is, and they tell you how to avoid it. So once you have an email list, this is what we do with new donors. It's what we've done when we've neglected our donors. There are times when we all get too busy and we forget to interact with them too much. You should never ask anybody for anything until you've engaged them. So we have a rule that we will send out at least 2, usually 3 emails before we will send out what's called an e-solicit, an e-appeal. So this is one way we do it. We do this with new donors. We send them within about 7 to 10 days an email. We're not asking for anything. We're telling them how we're doing. We're telling them maybe a story that illustrates something good we've done. 7 to 10 days later, we're sending the same group of people another email. We might mention that, we know you donated to us, but another great way to support us is to volunteer. We tell them a story, we give them an update, we don't ask for anything. We make it eminently clear in the subject line that we are not asking them for anything. People open it, they get engaged. You can pump up your engagement if you've got a really great story going. You can get it out into the local media, you can put it on your social media, you can write a blog about it. It begins to create buzz. And when someone who gets an email from you about something, and they start seeing it everywhere else, they start getting really interested. They start really paying attention to it. And we've watched this happen. We can actually watch our fundraising go bump way up right after a media story. This is an example of the second of a series of emails. And you can write these emails all at once. And if you have something like MailChimp, you can load them in, push a button, it'll send out the first email, and in 2 weeks, it'll send out the second email, or however you've timed it, and then they'll send out the third email. Once you've set it up, it can just run automatically. That's how we work with new donors. We have a system that's constantly sending out series of emails to new donors. This is the second one, and if you can read it, I'm writing to you again with a little more information about the impact made by your gift. When you're writing email fundraising copy, you should look through it, and if you're saying we did this, we did this, we did this, go through it and change it around and say you did this, you enabled this. It works. There's research that shows that the more you use the word you, the more likely people are to be engaged with that and to respond the way that you want them to. So we also had a little video embedded in that email, and it just showed happy pictures from the shelter, and it would be a picture of a puppy recovering from parvo, and it would say thank you. A picture of a cat playing with somebody in the shelter, thank you. That's all it was. People loved it. People wrote back to us and told us how much they loved it. So the third email, maybe the fourth, if you're really busy, 7 to 10 days later, and notice how short the time is. You don't want people to forget. A lot of fundraisers from the traditional fundraising field tells you should never ask anybody for anything more than once or twice a year. We ask people for stuff constantly. Our rule is if they've given a gift within the last 30 days, we exclude them from an email list. But 30 days to a traditional fundraiser is like, what? You're doing that? But there is research among the newer fundraising platforms that shows that the optimal time to ask a new donor for another gift, can anyone guess? 45 days after the first gift. If you do not ask for another gift within 45 days, you've lost those donors. That is completely against what traditional fundraisers tell you. But if you are asking for someone something within 45 days, you had better have been engaging them first. You had better been sending them email first that didn't ask them for anything, but thanked them and told them something about your cause. So you do have to ask. Some people don't like to ask, they just want to just engage and inspire. But I have had donors tell me when I haven't asked them for something, at times when we were really, really in need of their support, I didn't give you a gift this year because you didn't ask me. I thought you were okay. When does that ever happen, that you're okay in the nonprofit world? It doesn't happen. So to sum it up, by the time you get to that third email, you're not asking people for money. You are asking people for money. You're saying, please donate. And don't get clever with your ask. Don't say, please support me. Say, donate. There's research that says the more clear you are about what you want, the more likely people are likely to donate. They're more likely to click on a clever ask, like, won't you keep going? Something a little vague that isn't about money. They'll click on it more, but they'll donate less. If you say, we need your help, please send us money, they are more likely to give money. Which is weird, but there's a lot of research out there that shows this. And the last part of this is about trust. Don't pull back from an awful situation. People want to help. Trust them that they do want to help and ask them to be a part of what you're doing. Some people really hesitate about that, but we find that it doesn't matter. We tell very sad stories sometimes, but we always tell about how to solve that sad story, and that's what draws the donations. Most important thing you do is show your appreciation. I said it earlier. If you don't thank your donors, I mean, think about it. If you give a gift to someone and they never thank you or acknowledge it, how likely are you to give them something again? It's the same with donors. And I know when you're small and understaffed, it's really, really hard to do it, but find a way to do it. Even if it's a mass email, even if it's a social media post, thank people. The more people give you, the more time you spend on them. So the more effort you make to thank them. But what was often really hard for people is picking up the phone and thanking people. It's also the really fastest way to thank people, and it's also the way that donors most appreciate a thank you. Yeah, nobody answers the phone. We leave voicemail if nobody answers the phone, and then we email them. Hey, just left you a voicemail. And then they go listen to it. You generally want to thank people by the method that they gave to you. So if you sent out an e-solicit and the donation came through email, then you can thank them through email. If you did it through a direct mail, it's really nice to write a handwritten note back. Of course, you don't have time and money to do that for everybody, but if someone gave you a substantial gift, that's the way that you would thank them. We often, even after we've thanked people, we keep updating our stories. We keep it going. We keep the engagement going. So we are often, we are emailing donors all the time on my team. So just to sum it up, this is what happens when you reframe fundraising. You'll treat your supporters the way that they want to be treated, and they will respond. I know this sounds a little kind of concept-y, philosophical, maybe a little hippy-dippy, but it actually works. I have seen this work. You'll feel more energized and rewarded. I really started enjoying my job when I took on this attitude about fundraising. I have a lot of fun fundraising now. I'm serious when I say it's fundraising. And you'll hire the right people. You'll soon find that you need extroverts. You need people who love to work with people. You'll start not hiring those people who, A, don't love your cause. Anybody who applies to my team, if they don't mention how passionate they are about pets, even if I haven't asked about it in the application process, if they don't say it, no matter how skilled they are, their application goes to the bottom of the pile. The other thing is, as I'm interviewing people, if they manage to charm me in the interview, even though they're not trying, if I'm responding to them in a positive way, that's the person I hire. Because this is the kind of engagement that I want.